day my ex-wife called our daughter a mistake, something in me snapped. Not loud, not violent, just no. She thought she buried me that day. She didn't know I was learning how to rise. My name's Henry McCord, and this is how I turned heartbreak into justice, slow, quiet, and devastatingly precise. If you've ever been betrayed, broken, or told you're too late to start over, listen close. And if you're watching this right now, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing my story from. I want to know just how far the truth can travel. Get rid of that burden. The words cracked through the courtroom speakers like a rifle fired inside a church. For a long bruised heartbeat, nobody moved. Not the bailiff standing by the wall, not my ex-wife Lydia Mason with her polished expression, not her mother Eleanor, who clutched her handbag like a holy relic. The voice on the recording, cold, clipped, unmistakable, was Lydia's. Judge Ramirez raised her hand. Pause that, please. Grace Whitaker. My attorney lifted her finger off the space bar. The silence that followed was so sharp, it could have cut glass. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, behind the bench, steady and merciless. The same rhythm that's been in my ears since I turned 60 last February. The reminder that time doesn't stop for anyone, least of all a man like me. Mr. McCord, the judge said, looking at me over the rims of her glasses, we'll hear the full recording at trial. For now, this hearing concerns dissolution, custody, and property classification. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, I said. My voice came out lower than I expected, like gravel underfoot. For the record, I added before I could stop myself, the so-called burden she's talking about is a 5-year-old girl named June. My daughter. Grace touched my elbow. Henry, she whispered, let me do the talking. The clerk started reading again, his voice flat and bureaucratic. Item 1. Operating business. Rust and Root Woodworks, LLC. Estimated value $438,000, goodwill included. Across the aisle, Lydia blinked too slowly. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor looked like she was smelling something sour. Item 2, the clerk continued, residential duplex, West North Broadway, Clintonville neighborhood. Fully paid, generating $1,800 in monthly rent. Item 3, commercial warehouse condo and equipment insured at $225,000. Item 4, long-term lease license, Riverside Food Lot. City of Columbus income, steady at $900 per month after maintenance. Item 5, the June McCord Special Needs Trust, established 3 years ago. Trustee Henry McCord, beneficiary. Minor child June McCord, my girl. Not by blood, but by heart and sweat, and every splinter stuck in these hands. June's 5, now small and fierce. Down syndrome, yes, but she reads faces better than most adults. The first time she spelled her name with the wooden blocks we made in the shop, she grinned like she'd just won the Super Bowl. June, she said. Then she clapped for herself, and then for me. Always twice, just to make sure I felt it. Lydia's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client disputes the classification of these assets as separate property. Mr. McCord may claim ownership, but these ventures were formed during the marriage. Sit down, Counselor, Judge Ramirez said calmly. You'll have your turn. Eleanor leaned forward from the gallery. He's making himself out to be a saint, she hissed. All this charity talk, he's manipulating the court. I turned and met her eyes. Those charities, ma'am, are jobs. For people your age who got replaced by machines. Her nostrils flared. She smelled like lilac perfume and entitlement. I'd worked 40 years fixing the things men like her late husband broke, and she'd never forgiven me for being comfortable with sawdust under my nails. Grace adjusted her glasses. Your Honor, all profits from Rust and Root are transferred directly into the child's trust. We've submitted tax returns, payroll ledgers, contracts, and the full valuation report. The trust's funds can only be used for therapy education or long-term housing for the child. Judge Ramirez nodded slowly. I've read your filings, Miss Whitaker. And finally, Grace said, sliding a flash drive into the evidence envelope. These are recovered text messages and audio files between the petitioner and her mother, showing intent to coerce Mr. McCord into relinquishing fiduciary control of the trust. They are authenticated and time-stamped. Lydia's lips parted, but nothing came out. She stared at the wall behind the judge, the same way she used to stare at the microwave when she didn't like what I was saying, waiting for the beeping to save her. The judge motioned to the bailiff, who handed her a transcript. Let's hear the short clip you previewed earlier. Grace pressed play. Lydia's voice low and fast. You can't let him control that money. Take over the trust, sell the shop. He's sentimental, use that. If he won't sign, we'll make him. Or we get rid of that burden. Click. Silence. The room felt colder. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere in the back, someone exhaled hard through their nose. Lydia's attorney jumped up. Your Honor, these are taken out of context, the judge said. I spoke anyway. Context. The context is that she called our daughter a burden because she doesn't fit her picture of perfect. Mr. McCord, the judge warned, but softly. Grace leaned toward me, whispering, Let her hang herself, Henry. Eleanor rose halfway out of her seat. Your Honor, this man is not fit to care for a child with special needs. He's old, he's broke, and he runs a toy shed for attention. I turned. That toy shed employs 8 people over 55 and ships adaptive learning kits to 12 states. Her mouth twitched. She wanted to say something sharp, but the judge was watching. Grace raised a binder thick with paper. These are contracts with public schools, therapy centers, and hospitals, all under rust and root. Every dollar accounted for. Miss Mason has contributed 0 labor, 0 investment, and has been separated from Mr. McCord for over 14 months. The judge checked the page. You have proof of separate residence. Yes, Your Honor, I said. Utility bills, neighbors' statements, and a police call record from the night she moved out. I remembered that night too clearly. Her mother's SUV idling in the driveway, Eleanor honking like a parade marshal, while Lydia threw her gym bags into the back seat. She didn't even look back when June cried from the porch. Mr. McCord, the judge said. Is the child with you now? She's at school, I answered. With Mrs. Brooks, her counselor. They're baking muffins. June eats all the chocolate chips first. A few people smiled quietly. Even the judge's mouth softened for half a second. Grace returned to business. Your Honor, until trial, we request temporary supervised visitation for the petitioner and no unsupervised contact between the child and Miss Mason's mother. Lydia's attorney crossed his arms. Your Honor, that's punitive. My client's mother has every right to be in her granddaughter's life. After calling her defective, Grace shot back. After planning to get rid of her judge, Ramirez sighed. Enough. She shuffled the papers, scanning quickly. Here's what's going to happen. The court will recess for 24 hours. We'll review the raw audio data and verify its authenticity. If tampering is found, I'll sanction whichever side is responsible. Until then, interim order visitation is to be supervised, no contact at the child's school, and all exchanges through the county center. Eleanor jumped up. That's outrageous, ma'am, the judge said without looking up one more word, and I'll hold you in contempt. The gavel came down once sharp, final. Court stands in recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow. The bailiff called all raise. Everyone stood. Papers shuffled, heels clicked. Whispers rustled through the room like wind through dry leaves. Grace started packing up our files. She glanced at me. You okay? Define okay, I said, and almost smiled. You did fine, she said. Tomorrow we'll play the rest of the tape. The judge heard enough to know who's lying. Across the aisle, Lydia sat perfectly still, face-pale eyes fixed on the table. Her mother whispered something in her ear. Whatever it was, made Lydia's mouth tremble. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Grace slipped the drive into her briefcase. "You built this whole table, Henry," she said quietly. "Now they finally see the bomb underneath it." I nodded. My knees ached as I stood, my back reminding me of every nail I ever bent wrong. As we left the courtroom, I caught a glimpse of the courthouse flag through the window, faded but still holding. 24 hours. That's all. Tomorrow the truth wouldn't whisper anymore. It would roar. I was 39 when I met Lydia Mason. Too old to be foolish, too lonely to notice the warning signs. It was early spring in Columbus, the kind where the air still bites, but the light starts to forgive you. I was recovering from a back surgery after 25 years of building custom furniture for rich people who didn't know the difference between oak and ash. My ex-wife Margaret had died 2 years earlier from ovarian cancer, and for a while, I thought grief was a kind of loyalty. Then I learned it's just a disease that eats from the inside, if you let it. The clinic was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like someone's pressing a pillow over your memories. Lydia worked the front desk for the physical therapy wing. She had that city shine, sharp haircut, expensive shoes, lipstick, the color of confidence. The first time she smiled at me, I felt something shift. Not love, not yet, just the dangerous comfort of being noticed again. "Mr. McCord," she said, handing me a clipboard. "You're early. Most people dread this place." "I build things for a living," I told her. "Can't do much of that lying down." She laughed, a small, practiced sound. "Well, maybe you'll let someone else build you back up for a change." That was how it started. Just words, but words are lumber. You can build a whole house of them before you realize the foundation's wrong. We started having coffee after my sessions. She said she admired men who work with their hands. I said she reminded me of summer before it starts to hurt. 6 months later, we were married in a courthouse on a Wednesday afternoon. My brother Dan didn't come. He said, "Henry, you're not ready." I told him, "No one's ever ready." He was right. At first, Lydia was light itself. She organized my shop, painted the front door red, brought lunch in brown paper bags with her lipstick mark on the napkin. She said things like, "You could sell your work online, you know. You're sitting on gold." And I wanted to believe it. When she found out she couldn't have children, something about hormone imbalance, she cried for days. I held her. I meant it. But something hardened in her after that. She began to measure life by what she didn't get. A year later, my niece Amy called. Her daughter, my grandniece June, had been born with Down syndrome. Amy was 23, single, broke, and scared. "I can't do this," she said over the phone, her voice cracking like thin ice. "I can't give her what she needs." I drove to Dayton that night and came back with a 6-month-old baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. June. Lydia stood in the kitchen when I came home, arms folded. "You're joking. She's family," I said. "Amy signed temporary custody. Just till she gets back on her feet." "Henry," Lydia said, her voice tight. "I married you, not your relatives' mistakes." "She's not a mistake," I told her. "She's a child." That first night, June slept in a laundry basket by our bed because we didn't have a crib yet. She made this soft sound in her sleep, like a cat purring in reverse. When I reached over and touched her tiny hand, she gripped my finger and wouldn't let go. I think that's when my life reset its clock. The weeks that followed were chaos, bottles, therapy appointments, endless paperwork, but something in me woke up. The world got noisy again, alive. Lydia hated the noise. She said things like, "Henry, you're turning this house into a daycare," or "She'll never live a normal life. You're throwing yourself away." I told her there's no such thing as normal. She called me naive. I told her maybe that's why I still sleep at night. The first real fight happened in the kitchen 3 months later. June had a bad cold, and the doctor had prescribed antibiotics Lydia didn't want to pay for. "She's not even your child," Lydia said. "Why are you bleeding us dry for her?" "Because she's mine now," I said quietly. "Paper or not?" She threw the bottle against the wall. It shattered milk and glass running down the paint like tears. That night, I moved June's crib into my shop. We slept there, the smell of cedar mixing with baby powder. I remember thinking, so this is what love looks like when it hurts to stand. Over time, I learned Lydia's cruelty had a rhythm like a pendulum. Sweet, then cold. Flirt, then punish. When she realized I wouldn't choose between her and June, she chose for me. She stopped coming home early. She started dressing like she had somewhere better to be. She told her mother I'd lost my mind to pity. Eleanor called to tell me I was ruining Lydia's life. I hung up. Then came the message and email Lydia forgot to delete. It was from someone named Brad. "You're right," it said. "He's too old, too slow. You deserve more." That's when I stopped hoping she'd come back. But I didn't get angry. I got busy. Every night after June fell asleep, I went back into the shop and built things. Wooden puzzles, textured blocks, adaptive chairs for kids like her. I sold a few online. A few turned into hundreds. The noise of the saws became prayer. I called it rust and root, because that's what I was, something old still growing. When Lydia left for good, she didn't slam the door. She just took her suitcase, her mother's opinions, and a piece of my trust. She told me she'd be back for her share once I'd made something worth taking. And damn it, I did. By the time June turned 3, Rust and Root was shipping nationwide. Schools were ordering bulk sets. Therapists were calling for collaborations. For the first time in years, I could breathe without counting pennies. And that's when Lydia came back with a lawyer and a list. She said she wanted half. Half the shop, half the money, half the house. I told her she'd already taken half my heart and burned it. She said, "Then I'll take what's left." Now here we were years later in that courthouse, her pretending to be the victim, me pretending I wasn't exhausted from carrying both guilt and grace. People say time heals. They don't tell you it also sharpens. Because sitting there listening to her voice, calling my daughter a burden, I realized something I'd already buried: the version of myself that loved her. What was left standing was the man who'd learned to build from ashes. And tomorrow in court, that man would finish the job. The morning after Lydia left the house felt like a tomb that forgot the body. Her perfume still clung to the hallway like a ghost that didn't know where to go. The bed was half made, her side neat, mine tangled. I stood there for a long time, trying to remember what peace was supposed to sound like. Then I heard it, soft, rhythmic, steady. June in her crib babbling to herself in that little sing-song tone only she understood. She was 2 years old, small for her age, but fierce. She'd been born with a heart defect, common in kids with Down syndrome, and the surgery scar curved over her chest like a tiny pink question mark. Every morning I checked it, kissed it, and said, "We're still here, kiddo." That morning I said it twice. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I wasn't going to lose her. Not to the system, not to pity, not to Lydia's venom. I drove to the social services office with June bundled in her yellow blanket. The caseworker looked at me over her glasses. "Mr. McCord, are you sure you can handle full guardianship, ma'am?" I said. "I've built barns from rotted wood. I think I can handle diapers." She smiled at that. A month later, the papers were finalized, permanent custody granted. My name next to hers, Henry and June McCord. It felt like a birth certificate for both of us. The days that followed were hard. The kind of hard that doesn't show up in movies, June's therapy appointments, speech sessions, occupational work. It all piled up. Insurance barely covered half. My savings bled dry faster than I could refill it. At night, when she finally fell asleep, I'd sit at the kitchen table doing math. I didn't understand trying to figure out how love could cost so much and still be worth every penny. Then came the call from Dr. Patel, her developmental specialist. "Henry," he said, "I know this is overwhelming, but she's responding beautifully. She's curious. That's rare. Don't lose that spark in her." "Doc," I told him, "she's the only spark I've got. Those early years, Lord, they were a blur of noise and laughter and exhaustion." June learned to walk by holding onto the workbench in my shop. Every few steps she'd slap her palm against the wood and shout, "Da," like she was announcing her victory to the world. I'd stop sanding, drop the tools, and cheer like a fool. She started talking late. Her first clear word wasn't "Dad" or "no" or "more." It was "good." She said it while touching the grain of a finished oak chair I'd built for a client. "Good," she whispered, smiling, like she knew she was naming the world correctly. And that's when it hit me. My work didn't just keep us fed. It connected us. So I started designing tools for her. Blocks she could grip with her small fingers. Puzzle pieces with different textures. Boards that clicked together when she got them right. She didn't need a therapist that day. She had sawdust and love. That's how Rust and Root was born, not from a business plan, but from a father trying to speak his daughter's language. By the time she turned 3, orders were trickling in online. Small stuff, parents from therapy groups, a few teachers. But every review said the same thing: "It works." My kid smiled. It was enough to keep the lights on and my hope alive. I wish I could say Lydia stayed gone. But people like her don't disappear. They circle back when they smell success. She showed up one afternoon months later, unannounced. I was sanding a batch of sensory boards, the smell of pine in the air. June was napping in the corner, her tiny hand gripping her stuffed rabbit. Lydia looked around the shop, her heels clicking on the concrete. "You really turned this dump into something," she said. "Wasn't trying to impress you," I replied. She gave that little laugh, the one that used to melt me. "I'm just saying I didn't expect you to make it work. Most men your age just give up." I wiped my hands on a rag. "Most women your age don't come back to the scene of the crime." Her smile faltered. "I came to see June." "No," I said, calm but final. "You came to see what you missed out on." That's when she noticed the framed article on the wall. A local paper had written a small piece on Rust and Root grandfather's toys, turned therapy tools. Her jaw tightened. "So that's what you're doing now, milking sympathy from a disabled child?" "She's not a story," I said. "She's my kid." She opened her mouth again, but June stirred in her sleep. The noise stopped her. "I'll see you in court," Lydia said finally, her voice low, dangerous. "You're not keeping all this." I didn't answer. I just looked at the little girl sleeping in her chair, drooling on her rabbit, and thought, "You can take every damn thing I own, but not her." After she left, I stood in the doorway for a long while, letting the dust settle. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. That night I carved June a wooden heart. On the back I burned 2 words into the grain: "Still here." When she woke up the next morning, she held it tight to her chest and said, "Good." And for the first time since Lydia walked out, I believed her. Because we were still here. And we weren't going anywhere. The year June turned 4, Rust and Root stopped being a dream and started becoming a machine. Not the cold steel kind that eats people, the kind that breathes with purpose. It began with a video. I'd recorded June in the shop one morning, stacking our sensory blocks into a crooked tower and laughing every time it fell. I posted it online with a caption, "Built by my daughter's hands, designed by mine." It went viral in a week. Teachers, therapists, even soldiers with PTSD started ordering our kits. One of them wrote, "You built something that makes broken things work again." That line hit me deep. Maybe that's all I'd ever been trying to do, fix what life splintered. Money started to come in, not a flood, but steady rain. Enough to pay the mortgage early and hire 2 part-timers from the community college woodworking program. Both were veterans, both older than 30, both tired of being invisible in eye interviews. I told them, "You show up, you work honest, you stay." And they did. By summer, we had orders from 6 states. By fall, I'd opened a small warehouse off High Street. I should have been happy. And I was, until Lydia's lawyer showed up. He came with a smirk and a manila envelope. "Mrs. Mason," he said, "would like a complete valuation of Rust and Root Woodworks and any associated intellectual property." Intellectual property? I laughed. "These are wooden blocks, not the damn iPhone." He didn't laugh. He just said, "You'll be hearing from us." I didn't sleep that night. I walked the house checking windows, the locks, the tiny hand-painted sign June had made for her door, "My room, no Lydia." She spelled it wrong, but the message was perfect. The lawsuit came 2 weeks later, Lydia claiming half the company, half the profits, and for good measure partial custody of June. It felt like being mugged by the past. My lawyer, Grace, was the one who saved me. She was 58, sharp as glass, with that patient anger of someone who's seen men like me get steamrolled by prettier lies. "She's got no legal claim," Grace said, flipping through the papers. "You formed the LLC. After separation, no shared assets, no investment." "She's bluffing." "She's good at that," I said. "Then we bluff better." Grace helped me move everything cleanly, the house under my name, the trust under June's, the business aired white. She said, "You've already done the hard part, Henry. You built something honest. Now let's protect it." And we did. But protection has a cost. Lydia's mother, Eleanor, went on a smear campaign, whispering to the neighborhood that I was exploiting a disabled child, that I used pity to get famous. Some people stopped calling. Others sent letters. One said, "You should be ashamed of yourself parading your daughter online." I almost took the videos down. Then June brought me her tablet, replaying her own video, giggling, pointing at herself. "Good da," she said. Good, she wasn't ashamed. So neither was I. Still, the stress was poison. I stopped sleeping. I lost 20 pounds. My back started screaming again, that old familiar pain that reminds you how mortal you are. One night, after putting June to bed, I sat in the shop, the only light coming from the desk lamp. I looked around, sawdust everywhere, unfinished orders stacked like promises waiting to be kept. I thought about my late wife, Margaret, and what she'd say if she saw me now. Probably something like, "You never did know when to quit, Henry." The truth is, I didn't know how. But life doesn't care if you're tired. One cold January evening, the shop caught fire. A faulty wire in an old sander sparked. I was in the house putting June to sleep when I smelled it, that bitter chemical smoke. By the time the fire trucks arrived, half the building was gone. The machines, the lumber, the smell of everything I'd built turning into black dust. I stood in the parking lot barefoot, holding June, watching it burn. When the chief asked if I had insurance, I nodded. "Yeah," I said, my voice flat. "But I don't think they cover heartache." Grace called the next morning. "Henry, this isn't the end," she said. "Feels like it. Then make it a beginning." And maybe she was right. Because 2 weeks later, something strange happened. A local news channel did a short piece about the fire veteran craftsman loses shop but not hope. Donations came in. Emails, calls, offers from parents whose kids used our products. One woman from Oregon wrote, "You helped my son speak his first word. We're not letting you stop." I cried that night. Not loud, just quietly, the way men do when they've spent a lifetime pretending not to. Within a month, we rebuilt. Smaller space, cheaper rent. Same name. Rust and Root. We started again. And through it all, June kept smiling, unmarred by loss, untouched by fear. Her world hadn't burned down. To her, life was still full of blocks to stack, towers to fall, laughter to chase. One evening, as I watched her play among the new shelves, I realized something. Every time she built a tower, she never looked sad when it collapsed. She just clapped, laughed, and started again. That's when it hit me. She wasn't learning from me. I was learning from her. Fire takes what it wants. But sometimes, if you are lucky, it also leaves behind light. And in that light, I saw it clearly for the first time. This fight with Lydia wasn't about revenge. It was about redemption. Mine and June's. The courthouse smelled like rain and old paper, that heavy air you get in places where people come to lose something. I'd been here before, once for a speeding ticket, once to file guardianship papers for June. But this time was different. This time it was war. Grace met me in the hallway outside courtroom 3C, folders stacked in her arms, her gray hair pinned back tight. "You ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." "You're not here to prove she's bad, Henry," she said quietly. "You're here to prove you've already built a better life without her." I nodded, trying to ignore the way my hands trembled. Inside, Lydia sat at the petitioner's table, dressed in navy blue, every inch the respectable ex-wife. Her lawyer was young, too slick, too confident. Eleanor sat behind her, wearing pearls and disdain like armor. When the judge entered, everyone stood. "Case number 22F4819, Mason v. McCord," the clerk announced. I swear I felt my pulse in my teeth. The hearing started with numbers, always numbers. Income, assets, valuations. Grace laid out every document: tax returns, purchase receipts, payroll ledgers. Rust and Root wasn't a hobby. It was a registered LLC, audited, insured, and profitable. "Your Honor," Grace said, her voice calm and measured, "the business was founded after the marital separation, funded entirely from Mr. McCord's personal savings. There are no joint assets, no co-signatures, and no evidence of spousal contribution." Lydia's lawyer rose. "With respect, Your Honor, Mrs. Mason supported Mr. McCord emotionally and domestically during the inception of this business. The spirit of partnership entitles her to—" "Spirit doesn't pay bills," Grace interrupted, not unkindly. "And support is not ownership." Judge Ramirez arched a brow. "Counsel, you'll have your opportunity for argument. Proceed." Lydia spoke next, her voice trembling at first, the kind of tremble that sells sympathy. "Your Honor, I only ever wanted fairness. I supported Henry through his surgeries, through his depression after his wife's death. I helped him find purpose again. I believed in him before anyone else did. I felt the words hit, not because they were true, but because they had once been true enough." Then she turned her gaze toward me. "But after he took in that child," Grace's pen clicked once. Lydia corrected herself quickly. "After he took in June, things changed. He became obsessed. He stopped being my husband. Everything revolved around that girl and his little business. I was invisible." The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Mason, are you suggesting the respondent's dedication to his daughter was unreasonable?" Lydia hesitated. "I'm saying it consumed him, and it destroyed our marriage." Grace stood. "Permission to play Exhibit C, Your Honor." The judge nodded. Grace pressed play. Lydia's voice filled the room, harsh, metallic, through the speaker. "You can't let him control that money. Take over the trust, sell the shop. He's sentimental, use that. If he won't sign, we make him. Or we get rid of that burden." Eleanor gasped, too late to disguise it. The room froze. Lydia's lawyer scrambled. Objection. Context overruled, the judge said, her tone flat. I watched Lydia's face crack, just a little. The tremble in her voice vanished. What replaced it was something raw, panic. Grace walked to the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, that's the real context, he text. Mrs. Mason didn't lose her husband to love. She lost him to decency. She lost him because he refused to discard a child who needed him. Judge Ramirez folded her hands. Continue. Grace handed over a new folder. Bank statements. Your Honor, deposits made into the June McCord Special Needs Trust every month for the last 3 years. All verifiable, all independent of marital assets. And this, she lifted a paper, is the therapist's report confirming the child's progress under Mr. McCord's care. She's thriving. The young lawyer tried again, voice raised. Your Honor, my client was excluded from financial decisions, emotionally alienated, Grace repeated. She moved out 14 months before the business even existed. Because she felt unwanted, Grace smiled thinly. Because she wanted everything but responsibility. Lydia slammed her hand on the table. That's not fair. I was the one who pushed him to start that company. Grace didn't flinch. Then maybe you should have stayed long enough to see what it'd buy. The judge tapped her pen. That's enough back and forth. I've reviewed the evidence. She turned to me. Mr. McCord, you've remained silent throughout most of this. Would you like to speak? I stood, palms damp, knees stiff. Yes, Your Honor. I didn't look at Lydia. I looked at the judge, then at the court recorder, and finally at the window, the rain starting again outside. I'm not here to take revenge, I said. I'm here to keep what's mine, not the business, not the money. My peace, my daughter's future. I took a breath. When Lydia left, I didn't chase her. I was too busy keeping a baby alive, who didn't ask to be born different. I built Rust and Root to pay for June's therapy, to give her something when I'm gone. I didn't start a business to punish anyone. I started it because she saved me. When I didn't think I deserved fighting. The courtroom was silent. I could feel Eleanor's glare on my back, but I didn't turn. I've made mistakes. I continued, but walking away from that child wasn't one of them. And if that means being called obsessed, fine. I'll wear it. I'd rather be obsessed with doing right than addicted to pretending. The judge nodded once slowly. Thank you, Mr. McCord. When she began reading her decision, the words came out like thunder. All business and trust assets are found to be the sole property of the respondent. The petitioner's claim is denied. Custody of the minor child, June McCord, is granted exclusively to the respondent. Visitation for the petitioner is suspended pending psychological evaluation and approval by the Department of Family Services. Eleanor's pearls rattled as she gasped. Lydia went pale, her mouth open but soundless. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, whispering something that didn't matter. The gavel came down once. This court is adjourned. It was over. Grace gathered her papers, looking up at me with a small, proud smile. You did it, Henry. No, I said softly, watching the rain outside. We did. I stepped into the hallway, the noise of other people's heartbreaks echoing in the distance, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel broken. I felt clean. Justice doesn't fix what was lost, but it clears the ashes so something new can grow. And as I walked out into the gray afternoon, I knew exactly what I was going to build next. Not furniture, not toys. A life. For me, for June, and for the peace we earned. 6 months after the court ruling, the air around me finally changed. The silence in the house wasn't heavy anymore. It was soft, like the space right before dawn. June had grown taller, stronger. Her speech therapist said she was stringing full sentences together now. She called our little 2-story home our castle. Every night before bed, She'd run through her small list of prayers for her teachers, for her stuffed rabbit, for Da's back, and once whispering, like it was a secret for Mommy to be nice in heaven. I didn't correct her. Sometimes mercy means letting a child's faith stay simple. Rustin Root was thriving. Orders poured in faster than I could fill them. We hired 3 more workers, all folks over 50 who'd been told they were too old to keep up. Turns out, people with weathered hands build the most beautiful things. But success never felt like celebration to me. It felt like duty. Then one morning I met Aaron. He walked into my shop carrying a heavy aluminum frame over one shoulder and a coffee in the other hand. "You Henry McCord?" he asked. "Depends who's asking." He laughed. "Name's Aaron Lewis. I run Adaptive Motion up in Dayton. We build mobility devices for kids with cerebral palsy. I've been following your work. Thought maybe we could build something together." Something about the way he said it, steady, confident, without any sales pitch, made me listen. We talked for an hour, then 3. About wood density, about kids who deserve better design, about life after 50, and how it can still surprise you. When he left, he shook my hand and said, "I'll send the specs tomorrow. And Henry, it's good to meet a man who builds from heart instead of hype." I didn't realize it then, but that was the first honest compliment I'd believed in years. Over the next few months, Aaron and I worked side by side on a line of sensory tools, wood meeting metal, his precision matching my patience. He'd drive down on Fridays, stay through the weekend, and somehow the shop didn't feel like just mine anymore. He had this calm about him, the kind of quiet strength I used to envy in other men. He didn't fill silence with words. He respected it the way a craftsman respects a grain pattern. June adored him. She called him Unc Air because the R in Aaron always slipped out soft. The first time she ran into his arms, I felt a part of my heart unclench that I didn't even know was still tight. One Saturday afternoon, while June played with the shop dog, Aaron and I sat out back, drinking coffee from tin mugs. The ski was pale and white, the air smelling faintly of cedar and rain. He said, "You ever think about what's next, Henry?" "What do you mean?" "You built something out of ashes. That's rare. But people like us, we forget to live when the fire's out." I looked at him, at those steady gray eyes that didn't pity, didn't judge. "You saying I should start dating again?" He grinned. "I'm saying you should stop waiting for life to apologize." That night, after I tucked June into bed, I stood at the kitchen sink washing 2 mugs instead of 1. My hands shook just a little. It wasn't fear, it was the strange ache of realizing loneliness had started to leave me, and I wasn't sure I was ready to let it go. The next morning, Aaron brought breakfast pancakes, blueberries, and a small bouquet of sunflowers. June clapped her hands like it was Christmas. For a man who'd spent years building furniture, I'd never been good at building trust. But Aaron didn't rush me. He just showed up, steady, kind, unannounced, but never unwelcome. We started spending weekends together, taking June to the park, cooking dinners, fixing broken things that didn't really need fixing. There was no romance movie moment, no music swelling in the background, just a slow human warmth. And one evening, as we cleaned up after dinner, Aaron said quietly, "You know, Henry, you don't have to do this alone anymore." I looked at him, this man who knew my story, my scars, my stubbornness, and for once, I didn't feel the urge to argue for you. That night, after June fell asleep, I sat in the shop and stared at the first wooden block I ever carved for her. I thought about everything that had burned and everything that had survived. When Aaron came back from locking up, he placed his hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so," I said. "For the first time in a long time, I think so." He smiled. "Good. Because I was thinking Rustin Root deserves a second name on the sign." I raised an eyebrow. "What, you want equity?" He laughed. No, Henry. Partnership. The word hung in the air like a promise. And maybe that's what this part of life is not. Fireworks, not second chances dressed up as miracles. Just two people deciding that quiet love counts too. When I went to bed that night, June's wooden heart sat on the nightstand, the one with "still here" burned into it. Yeah, I thought we are. Still here, still building, still loving ghostly this time. 2 years after the courtroom dust settled, life had gentled itself around us, like a well-worn flannel. Rust and root had grown beyond anything I could have imagined. We had contracts with 3 states, a staff of 10, and a line of sensory learning products that carried June's initials burned into the back JM series. But the thing that changed me most wasn't success. It was peace, the kind that doesn't announce itself. Aaron and I had married quietly the previous spring. No tuxedos, no choir, no spectacle, just a backyard. A few friends, June tossing flower petals, and the scent of barbecue smoke in the air. When the justice of the peace asked if I'd take Aaron to be my partner, I said, "Already do." He adopted June soon after. She was 6, then reading simple words, counting to 10, with both hands up, proud of her fingers. On the adoption day, the judge handed her a small stuffed gavel. "You made it official, kiddo," he said. June smiled, wide, hugged the toy, and said, "My family." Aaron laughed. I cried. For a while I thought the past had finally gone quiet. But it has a way of whispering back through cracks you thought were sealed. It started with a letter. The return address said Eleanor Mason, Lydia's mother. I hadn't heard from her in years. Inside, her handwriting shook across the page. "Henry, Lydia passed away last month. Heart attack. She was living with me again. I don't expect sympathy. I just thought you should know. June deserves the truth one day. Eleanor." I read it twice, maybe 3 times, waiting for some kind of emotion to rise, rage, relief, anything. But all I felt was a quiet sort of finality, like a door gently closing after a storm. Aaron found me sitting at the kitchen table, the letter spread out between my coffee and the morning bills. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "I think I am." "You want to go to the funeral?" "No," I said, and it surprised me how steady it came out. "But maybe I'll send flowers. White ones." "Mercy," he said softly. "No," I replied. "Closure." We sent lilies. No note, just lilies. A week later, Eleanor called. Her voice was tired, brittle. "Henry," she said, "I know I've done unforgivable things, but I'd like to see my granddaughter, just once before I go." Every instinct told me to hang up. But Aaron was standing in the doorway, arms folded, saying nothing. So I said, "One visit. Here at the house, you come alone." That Saturday she arrived wearing a beige coat, too big for her frame. Her hair silvered, her eyes less sharp than I remembered. June was wary at first, clinging to my leg. "Hello, June," Eleanor said, voice trembling. "You've grown so much." June studied her, then smiled cautiously. "You old." Aaron stifled a laugh. "I didn't." Eleanor chuckled weakly. "Yes, sweetheart. Very old." We sat in the living room. June showed her drawings, stick figures, and sons, our family labeled Da, Dad, Air, and me. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "She looks happy," she whispered. "She is," I said. "I was wrong, Henry." Her voice cracked. "I thought strength meant control. But you showed me what it really means." I didn't answer right away. I watched June as she hummed to herself, arranging crayons by color, perfectly content in her world. "Forgiveness doesn't mean I forget," I said finally. "It means I'm done carrying it." Eleanor nodded. "That's fair." Before she left, she took June's hand. "Be good, my girl," she said softly. "You're loved. Don't ever doubt that." After the door closed, June looked up at me. "Da," she said. "Yeah," I said. She's remembering too much. June nodded solemnly. Then we give her good memory. She ran to her room and came back holding the small wooden heart I'd carved years ago, the one that said still here. She handed it to me. For her. I swallowed hard. You sure, June? That's your favorite. She smiled. We got love, we make more. That night I drove to Eleanor's house and left the heart on her porch wrapped in brown paper. No note. Just that. 2 months later she passed away. I like to think she died holding that little piece of wood. Life kept rolling forward. June started first grade in a mainstream classroom, her backpack almost as big as she was. Aaron walked her to school every morning and every afternoon. She ran out shouting, Dad, Air, look what I did. The world had once told me this child would be a burden. But she'd turned into a compass, pointing me north when I'd forgotten where it was. And maybe that's what forgiveness is, not letting the past off the hook, but letting yourself step off it. That fall, I sat on the back porch. The sun had set, washing the ski in honey light. June was painting beside me, Aaron, fixing the bird feeder. The air smelled like cedar shavings and home. Funny thing, I said quietly. All those years I thought revenge would make me feel alive again. But it was this. Aaron looked up. This, yeah, I said, smiling at them both. This ordinary, quiet miracle. He nodded, then reached for my aunt. And for the first time in a long, long while, I realized the weight I'd carried for years wasn't anger. It was love, waiting for a place to rest. Now it had one. The morning of June's 8th birthday broke, with the kind of light you only see once in a while, thin gold-like, forgiveness spilling through the trees. She woke me before dawn, jumping on the bed whispering loudly, Duh! I'm 8 now. 8 is big. 8 is brave, I said, pulling her into my arms. Her hair still smelled faintly of lavender from the night before. You're my miracle, kiddo. She giggled, her fingers tracing the gray in my beard. You old dethays. Yeah, I said, laughing softly, old enough to know better. The truth is, life had gone still in the best way. Rust and Root was now a national brand, 10 states, 1 international partner in Canada. Aaron handled the production and logistics. I oversaw the designs, though I spent more time these days mentoring younger craftsmen than cutting wood myself. The business had become something larger than me, which was the whole point. June's trust fund had grown too, not just in money, but in purpose. We started a nonprofit called the Still Here Foundation, offering free developmental toys to families who couldn't afford therapy tools. Every kit bore the same burned inscription, Still Here. That phrase had followed us through every storm. It had become our family crest. One late October afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was old, weak, and somehow familiar. Henry, the man said, It's Peter Mason, Eleanor's husband, Lydia's father. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly a decade. Peter, I said slowly. How are you? I'm dying, he said simply. Stage 4 liver failure. I'm calling because I need to tell you something. I went quiet. He continued, his breath shallow. Lydia, she wasn't evil, Henry. She was afraid. She thought love was a competition. She learned that from me and Eleanor, 2 people who spent a lifetime mistaking pride for strength. I see that now. I didn't know what to say. I saw a news story about you, he said. About your foundation, about June. She's beautiful. You gave her everything we didn't understand how to give. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. For all of it. There was a pause. I could hear a monitor beeping faintly in the background. Peter, I said finally, I forgave you years ago. You just didn't know it. He laughed softly. You always were the better man. No, I said. Just the man who had no choice but to learn. He exhaled the sound long, peaceful. Would it be all right if I met her, just once before I go. I hesitated, then said, yes. Come by tomorrow. She should meet her grandfather, the real one. He came in a wheelchair pushed by a nurse. His skin was paper thin, his hands trembling, but his eyes were kind. June greeted him with cautious curiosity. Hi, she said. You my grandpa? He smiled faintly. If you'll have me. She nodded solemnly. Okay. Then she ran to her room and returned with a painting, 3 stick figures under a big yellow sun. She handed it to him proudly. That's me Da and Dad Air. You can be the bird. He laughed through tears. I'd like that, sweetheart. He stayed for an hour, just long enough to watch her play with her building blocks. When he left, he gripped my hand tightly. You did right by her, Henry. You did right by all of us, even when we didn't deserve it. He died 2 weeks later. After the funeral, I drove home alone, the Ohio sky gray and endless above me. The radio played quietly some old Willie Nelson song about forgiveness and rain. And for the first time, I realized I didn't feel haunted anymore. When I got home, June was waiting by the door. Da, she said. You said. I knelt and looked her in the eyes. Not sad, baby, just remembering. She tilted her head. Remembering's good. Means you still love. I smiled, tears catching in the corner of my eyes. Yeah. You're right, June. It means you still love. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat in the workshop, the lamplight soft on the sawdust. I pulled out the first wooden block I ever made, the one that started it all. It still had the faint burn mark from the fire years ago, a scar that somehow made it more beautiful. I thought about everything that had happened: the courtroom, the betrayal, the rebuilding, the love that found me when I wasn't looking. And it struck me how life, for all its cruelty, always gives you one more chance to choose decency over bitterness. One more chance to be kind even when no one was kind to you. That's what survival really is. Not endurance, not revenge. Grace. In the morning, I placed that old block on June's nightstand next to her stuffed rabbit. On it, I carved one more word beneath the old inscription, still here always. Years from now, when I'm gone, she'll find it. She won't remember the courtrooms, or the fire, or the noise of broken people trying to hurt each other. She'll remember the laughter, the love, the quiet mornings filled with the smell of sawdust and coffee. She'll remember that we didn't just survive, we built something beautiful out of ruin. And maybe that's what legacy really is. Not the money, not the business, not the awards. Just this. The proof that love can outlast cruelty, that peace can outgrow pain. When the dust settles, what remains isn't revenge. It's the freedom to finally lay your heart down and rest. You know, people ask me sometimes if I ever regret it. The fight, the years, the loneliness. The truth is no. Because every scar on my hands built the life my daughter has now. Revenge didn't save me. Grace did. The quiet kind that comes when you stop begging for apologies and start living like you deserve peace. If my story means anything, it's this. You're never too old, too tired, or too broken to rebuild. I'm Henry McCord, and I'm still here. If you made it to the end, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what still here means to you. I'll be reading every word.